is so embarrassingly rated. Embarrassingly rated in the context that this is a nation that has all it takes to be a nation in terms of human resource endowment, in terms of material components, natural human endowments. We have what it takes to be. Most of these great nations that are even rating us now don't really have what we have as a nation in terms of human and natural resource endowments. So for us to be this bad in corrupt practices and tendencies is mind-boggling. It's quite disturbing. It's unfortunate that we find ourselves in these contemporary times globally, that we are still so lowly rated. It's abysmal. It's disturbing. It's not the best.
True.
Seriously.
Yeah, Mr. Jamiu, from your perspective, do you subscribe to what Transparency International has said, that we're actually 149 in the country, in the world, sorry?
Whether I subscribe to it is a matter of my perception and opinion. Just like the index itself, it said it's corruption perception index. It's subjective when you say perception. Perception is your view, how you view something, how you feel. It's not that when you talk about empirical data, you are talking about facts. But when you talk about perception, you are talking about opinion and how you say things. So if you ask me how I feel about the rating of the Transparency International, I will tell you, in my own opinion, that since the methodology has been faulted, we cannot absolutely rely on the data. Because I'm from the academics, and I know the importance of methodology. How you arrive at your conclusion matters a lot, even in the logic. When you say your premises is invalid, then your conclusion will be invalid. So it's a matter of perception. So because it's a perception, you cannot absolutely fault the perception of those that Transparency International consulted to let them express their view about the happenings in Nigeria as it relates to corruption. So it's subjective, and when you say subjective, you cannot absolutely say it's right or wrong, since it's an opinion, and it's allowed in the constitution around the world to express opinion. So the opinion, and if you look at the methodology adopted by Transparency International, it was expressly stated that they gathered the data from secondary sources. And what do we mean by secondary sources? Other organizations that seek opinions of multinational companies, business owners, international organizations. So if you ask me, what's my perception? My perception is that it is not, just like someone will say, perception is not reality. Perception is different from reality. What we had, what Transparency International is talking about corruption in Nigeria is the opinion of people. So I cannot rely on that as an academia. What I rely more on is empirical data that speaks to the reality, not opinion. So I submit.
Okay, let's, even though we know that after this release, so to say, from Transparency International, we have the reaction of the federal courtesy of the Minister of Information, who actually faulted, or naturally faulted, the opinion of Transparency International. Well, let's forget any index. Let's forget opinion of those who think they are in charge of looking at this thing. Let's come back home. Let's look at it as Nigerians. Let's look at what has been happening in the past few. Let's look at the objective of the present government. And of course, let's look at the issue of corruption, which we know exists. Let's look at the kind of what has been, how has EFCC been performing, how has ICPC been performing. Let's look at the indices around us. Where are we having? Can we say that the present administration is actually tackling corruption the way it should be, from the experience we have had in the past few years? Or will you say that it is because of insecurity, so corruption is dark side. So let me start with Jamie again.
Okay. I mentioned the issue of methodology the other time, but what you said, let us come to reality. So according to the Transparency International, what you just mentioned about the scorecard of EFCC and scorecard of ICPC was not part of the indices used to measure the corruption perception index. What were used are basically maybe immigration issue of rule of law, among other variables that are not within the performance of the anti-graft agencies. So, but when we come back home, when we look at the activities of EFCC and ICPC, it depends on the divide you have. If you want to praise the present administration, you will definitely have examples and illustration to allude to the position that the present administration has tried within its capacity to stem the virus, or which we call corruption. But if you look at it in another way, depending on the divide you have, if you look at examples of those that are tried, and allegation of political persecution and selective prosecution. So you will also have points of, in terms of criticism of the present administration in its bid to stem corruption. But by and large, what is most important, and that has been my position, that irrespective of what the present administration is doing in anti-corruption crusade, EFCC, ICPC, I believe that it's better for us. In as much as, even if it is selective, let's have an administration that will curtail corruption and kick against opposition that are corrupt, even if it is political persecution. In as if he who comes to equity must come with clean hand. And if you are accusing the administration of ineptitude, corruption, and you yourself, if you are corrupt when you are in power, then you don't have justification to criticize the present administration for being mischievous or political persecution when questions are being asked about how you expend the resources of the nation. So by and large, my own perception is that the prosecution of EFCC so far, at least high-profile personalities have been investigated, some conviction secured, although we have some pocket of media trial, as people will call it, whereby people are not guilty, so to say, by according to the court, maybe due to lack of evidence. And you know the justice system in this country is so complex, it's such that before you prove an allegation of corruption against public officer, it's a tall order. So that's one of the challenges that we still need to work on, that the effort of EFCC so far, I can give an average because they've made efforts, but the system, we don't lack the policy framework to achieve this. We don't lack the legal framework to achieve this, but the political will and the implementation will. That's one of the challenges we have in this country. We have a lot of ideas, we have brilliant ideas, but our problem is implementation. Problem of EFCC and ICPC concerning anti-graft war is that many of the policies that are in place are unable to be achieved. Another point I will want to make here is that one of the allegations of Transparency International is perception concerning the prosecution and of political exposed person and the money received from politicians or political exposed person are not well spent, in quotes. That there's no transparency, because we had trillions of naira, billions of dollars that have been collected from these politicians and political exposed person. But the issue is that there has not been enough transparency on this money, on how this money is spent. So these are one of the key points that I believe that the EFCC should improve on. Talk about the ICPC. Concerning the reality, I think there's also need for the all stakeholders to bring up more acceptable indices, because when we talk about ICPC and EFCC, or public sector. Corruption is not limited to the public sector. We have corruption in the private sector too. So our analysis of corruption, limiting it to the public sector, might not give us an adequate analysis and appreciation of the situation.
Okay, Dr. Adebi, the way we conduct public probe, so to say, and of course, and the way it dies down, is it not a minus for us? At times they accuse the press of. Let me give you an example. Recently, during this corona, there was this Niger Delta probe by the House of Representatives, when the MD even collapsed. We had the issue of off your mic. Now, we saw the beginning of this probe. We have not heard about the findings, talk less of implementation. So many of them like that. And of course, you just hear when they start and it will just die a natural death. Is it good for the country? What will be done?
Obviously, it's not good and it can never be good. You see, we are talking of the effects, but not the causal factors. When you look at a society like ours, like I said in my intro, we have everything around us, but there's a disconnect between the leadership and the led, the value system. Our value system has been seriously eroded. Values, when I talk of value system, and honesty as a character principle, accountability, effective communication between the governed and the led. Like he said, he who goes to equity must go with clean hands. Government is about the appropriation and allocation of scarce resources. To what extent have we transparently managed these scarce resources? Why are we corrupt in the first instance, like I said? Not just talking about the effect, not neglecting the root causes. I talked about value disconnection, value reorientation. There's a problem there. In years past, our leaders of yesteryears were known to be very, very honest in conduct and in character. Their yes is their yes and their no is their no. But today, you have a system or a situation where we have professional politicians, not professionals in politics. That's also a problem. We have over-monetized the political process to the extent that leaders are not accountable as expected, because you don't have professionals in politics, you have political professionals. It should not be so. It should be the reverse. You must have something doing before going into politics. You must have something to fall back on before going into politics. But then, now the reverse is the case. You have people that are professional politicians. How do you explain that? You don't have a professional background. He's a lecturer. I retired from the civil service. You are a journalist. You are professionals. You have something you have been doing, you have been practicing over the years. If peradventure you venture into politics, you still have something professionally to fall back on. But in most cases, what you have is totally at variance with what we have. So management of resources, allocation of resources, and the like, there is that disconnect. There's value crisis. Our value system has been totally bastardized, has been thrown to the dustbin, and this is the outcome. So whether transparency rated us as being 149, 146 or whatever, to some extent, when you look at the realities on the ground, we are corrupt seriously as a nation. Seriously, that is the reality. When you talk of electricity, where is it? Democracy is government for the people, by the people, and for the people. You have to provide your electricity. Is that not what is responsible to the government? Why can't government provide these basic necessities of life? Where are the roads? The health system, where are they? These are essential duties and responsibilities of any good government. Any responsible government should be able to provide the citizens with water, with electricity, with good roads, security, and the likes. These basics are...
I'm not worrisome when corruption probes are never
concluded. These are facts. These are fundamentals. This is what you see by the day. Driving from town to this place, you look at the road condition. You have to provide your own water. I've been advocating something, I call it self-tocracy, as opposed to democracy. Government of yourself, by yourself, for yourself. Because you provide your own water, you buy fuel to run your generator, the road leading to your house, you have to maintain it. You have to take care of a lot of things that government should normally provide and take care. And this is basically lacking. That is Why we have people that that is why we have the incidence of corruption all over the places. And it will continue to be so, except we go back to the roots and begin to redress our value system, our value orientation, and the like, so such that we begin to do things in accordance with the rules, with the norms, accepted modalities and standards of international governance that is not happening here in Africa. These are problems we have to frontally attack. We have to frontally.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Jamiu, I want to, look into and delve deep into NSAS, because yeah, it started as an agitation against police brutality in Nigeria, but then we have seen it, cascade down into, talking about, end to corruption in the country, more transparency and all of that. Now, the probe issue is not yet, sorted. I mean, with the judicial panels in different states right now. And they're thinking of opening up the Lekki toll gate back. That is thoughts of another protest and all of that coming up. Do you think that we are doing a good job when it comes to stemming corruption in the country? Because if this had gotten better from October last year when this protest started, and now agitation is still on again to start this protest again. Do you think there's been any improvement, even though judicial panels were being set up in different states across the country?
To determine whether there has been improvement or not, we look at the conclusion from the judicial panel. Let's get the reports from the judicial panel, and we'll be able to know the cause of action from both parties, from the army, from the government, from the protesters, and just like we said, so that I will not be charged for contempt. So I will not be able to make statements on what is happening on that judicial panel. But from the last protest to now, has there been any improvement? The problem we have in this country is that we fail to appreciate the situation and take advantage of it in order to solve problems. What happened during the NSAS protest was unfortunate. We find out, from my own perception, I found out that many that are calling for reforms are not reformed. So we are calling for police reform. We are leading protests, but in our own little way. It was quite unfortunate. The extent of police brutality. I have personal experience. I have family members that have been brutalized by the police. I have funny experience with the police, and my background is such that I also do investigation. I do fact-checking. I conduct research in terms of information provided by stakeholders when it comes to the police, the protesters, among others. And recently, a police spokesperson claimed that police is the least corrupt in Nigeria, and one of the organizations I did fellowship with come out to find out that that statement was not correct. That in fact, many empirical data prove otherwise. That police actually is one of the most corrupt institutions in Nigeria. But police is not in isolation. The problem of this country, we fail to appreciate the root of problem. We only look at issues from the peripheral. And if we continue to do this, we might not be able to solve our problems. Our problem is not police corruption, I must tell you. It's a systemic problem. In as much as we still have a situation where our system favors and encourages corruption, police will continue to be corrupt. Don't expect magic from... The police are not angels. They are human beings like us. And look at the difference between what happened when police left the streets. We have more of corruption from the protesters, so to say, or the hoodlums. I don't know the narrative you support, whether they are hoodlums, whether they are protesters, whether it was hijacked. We found out that I have an experience, a commercial driver ply road from Lagos to Abeokuta, and he settled the police with maybe about 350 naira or 500 naira to get to Abeokuta from Lagos. But during the NSAS protest, police were not on the road, and we find the hoodlums, so to say, hijacking the checkpoint. And he spent nothing less than 3,000 naira from here to Lagos 3,000 naira.
So
Compared to
the corruption is on different levels.
those that are protesting against police brutality, they even did worse during the NSAS protest. And that's the point that our problem is not police corruption itself. It's a systemic problem. Everybody in the society is just looking for an opportunity to violate the right of another person. Is looking for an opportunity to corruptly enrich themselves. Just like a comedian mentioned that a lot of people that intend to enrichly corrupt themselves are more than those that are presently there. Everybody is looking for opportunity to enrich him or herself. Even this advocacy that yes, police are corrupt, people hide under genuine concern to achieve personal agenda. So how do you define that? Truly, the police are corrupt, there should be end to police brutality. How do you now explain a situation where some people are taking advantage of that situation to even cause more havoc to the country? So whether there is improvement or not, my answer to that is that there will never be an improvement until we address the root cause of the problem. Our institution, the system, from home, from the family, individuals, is not only the government. Government is corrupt, many government institutions, but the type of leader we have is the type of individual in the society. We cannot separate individual from the society. The type of president we have, the type of governor we have, the type of institution we have, they are also part of a conclusion here is that there is no improvement. There will not be improvement.